Hello, everybody, and welcome to Friday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live right here on Giants.com and the Giants mobile app. It's all brought to you by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. Lance Medow, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
Good to see you. Hope all is well.
Indeed.
Missed you out in Indy. It was obviously we didn't get to see it. You held down the fort on that Monday show for us.
Yep.
We're going to do a big free agency preview today. You've heard from me and Paul ad nauseum over the last 3 days talking about this. So I'm sure you're tired of hearing from me. But we should touch before we get Lance's kind of plan on what he thinks the Giants should do in free agency, and you can connect it to the draft too a little bit if you want. A couple pieces of news have come down recently, Lance. If I miss any of this, please let me know because there's been a lot, and I'm going off memory. Joey Bosa was let go by the Los Angeles Chargers. Right. Already rumors that he might be heading to join his brother on the San Francisco 49ers, wondering how expensive that might be. The Niners do have cap issues, and they're still trying to figure out a way to bring Brock Purdy back and not to have to tag him, which would be I guess he's on his fifth-year option. Don't have to tag him yet, but figure out a way to get him on a reasonable contract. Shaq Mason was let go by the Houston Texans. That happened. Joe Thuney got traded from the Chiefs to the Bears as the Chiefs tried to free up money to sign Trey Smith. The Bears continue to solidify their offensive line in front of Caleb Williams. Ben Johnson not messing around. They bring in Jonah Jackson as well, so two starting guards for them in Chicago. Zach Bond got re-signed by the Philadelphia Eagles after they gave Saquon his contract extension. Howie's really leaning into the now, man. They keep pushing more and more money into void years in the future, but they're trying to bring back as many guys as they can. I imagine that probably means Josh Sweat and Milton Williams will find jobs elsewhere, so will Mekhi Becton, but they decided to try to re-sign Bond and Saquon Barkley. A couple other minor re-signings here and there. Barnes got re-signed by the Lions. Tutu Atwell got re-signed by the Rams. Maybe a couple of things that are out there. I don't recall quite off the top of my head, but you're seeing a lot of teams try to cut costs. Oh, the Jaguars let go of Evan Ingram.
Yeah.
The Jaguars also traded. They were going to cut Christian Kirk. They ended up getting a seventh rounder for him in a trade with the Houston Texans. That was another move that came down. So a lot of teams either cleaning up their books or seeing this free agency class, Lance, is not great. So they're trying to re-sign their players before they hit the market so they get them on maybe not team-friendly deals, but at least under team control before they have a chance to explore free agency.
Well, which is what you want to do because you don't want to compete with the rest of the market. So it's understandable that that's the game plan. Another thing that just recently came down is the Commanders are going to cut Jonathan Allen.
That was the other one. That's right.
So you could throw his name into the mix as well in terms of a veteran pass rusher, defensive lineman who, if a team feels they're a piece away or two, I'm sure he's going to get a lot of interest from that standpoint.
Two other trade things. Trey Hendrickson was told he can seek a trade and find out what his value is on the open market, and then who knows, if he doesn't see the money he wants, he can always go back to Cincinnati. They can figure that out. Jimmy Haslam apparently denied a request from Myles Garrett to meet with him in person about his trade request. That's interesting. DK Metcalf requested a trade. That was another one. The reports are they want a 1 and a 3. I would say good luck to you on that remark, especially since the team that gets him.
Well, supposedly there has been a lot of chatter already that they're receiving with him on the market, at least.
I'm sure there's interest. I'm not sure how much interest there is at a 1 and a 3, given the team's going to have to give him a $30 million contract extension on top of that.
Well, that's the thing, yeah.
Which I think, Terrell Bernard got re-signed by the Bills. That came down this morning. So a lot of stuff going on heading into free agency. The Giants was released and announced, I believe, or Mike Garafolo reported at least, that they're going to, on the exclusive rights free agency contract, Tommy DeVito, reports are that he's going to be back. So all this kind of bookkeeping, housekeeping stuff, Lance, is going on. Anything you want to add to that? And if not, you can kind of go into your plan for what you think the Giants should do in free agency.
Well, I think you pretty much ran through everything, so you didn't leave too much meat on the bone for me to add in terms of all the dialogue and events that took place over the last few days. But this is busy times and exciting times. I mean, this is one of my favorite times throughout the entire NFL offseason because you can reshape a franchise based on if you have a really smart and wise game plan to complement what you're going to do in the draft. I mean, I want to expand briefly before I get into what I think maybe the Giants should do is you brought up what Howie Roseman is deciding to do this offseason. What he's doing is he's also reinvesting in good decisions that were made last offseason. I mean, when you think about it, John, Zach Bond and Saquon Barkley were his two best additions on each side of the ball in terms of Saquon being an offensive weapon, what he helped do for the run game, and Zach Bond became an all-pro player when he had been, a complimentary linebacker through the early stages of his career. But he comes to Philadelphia. They had a significant void at that position. They normally don't invest in that position, but he was an excellent fit for Vic Fangio. So they decided, okay, he's not an elder statesman. He's not an old guy. He doesn't have a lot of mileage on the tires. Let's reinvest in him. And I like the move. I think he can be the identity of the middle of their defense because they have so much depth up front that he can be the cleaner, right? Anything that gets to the second level, Zach Bond is there to absorb it. So that's what has led Howie Roseman to shift his thinking. That, yes, you could say he's thinking about more of the now, but I look at Bond and Barkley also are not guys that are on their last legs. So I think you can get a little bit more than just the now by deciding to take parts of your salary cap and put it towards, and once again, Barkley's not a running back, he's a weapon, and Bond, if he's going to be an every down linebacker, John, I would much rather invest in that than invest in a linebacker who's going to be on the field for first and second down. You're going to take him off the field on third down, and what are we doing here? So, Bond checks off of a lot of those non-concerns that you would have with other players at similar positions. So I think what Philadelphia is doing is they're evolving, they're transforming, and you have to do that.
And those are positions they wouldn't normally spend on.
Exactly,
so.
But I think they're looking at who the player is as opposed to the position.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's important. And we talked about that through the context of the Giants. You could have somebody that plays linebacker, wide receiver, running back, you name it, but tell me how you're going to use the player. Right. Don't just bottle them in or box them in into a certain label. Now, with respect to the Giants, when I was looking over the free agency list, and I think that, we've had similar conversations in the past, but I think what the Giants need to do is I want to see them target players that are coming off rookie contracts. I think that's where good value is, John. I don't want to borrow a guy for a year. I want to bring in players that you can build around, and once again, they may be at the point where, okay, it didn't pan out with their initial team, but you can reshape them and mold them into what you need here moving forward into their second contract. So those are the players that I'm going to be throwing out and emphasizing during the course of our conversation. And I also leaned on a show that we did recently where we were talking about what positions the Giants need to prioritize this offseason. So I wasn't necessarily looking at every position. I was looking at, positions of need and emphasis. The interior offensive line, the cornerback position, the defensive line, the quarterback, those were areas that I was really honing in on as opposed to just saying, I like this guy and I like that guy.
Yeah, just to stress, too, we're talking about these players in a vacuum. They're going to be free agents. They're still technically not available. This is not us linking the player to the Giants. This is a hypothetical situation we're talking about here, as though we're talking about Team X, not necessarily the Giants. So let's get into it. What's your plan?
All right, well, let's start with the offensive line. There are two guys coming off of rookie contracts that I think are intriguing because of their age and because of their versatility. And remember, free agency, John, is not about getting the big name. It's about bang for the buck and who perhaps, once again, fits into that label that I was just talking about. So
the other thing I always say, production per dollar, right?
Yeah, without a doubt. I think that's a very fitting terminology. So the two guys that I think are attractive from that standpoint, Will Fries, who was with the Indianapolis Colts. Okay, you're talking about a 26-year-old. He is coming off an injury that limited him to just 5 games, but that to me doesn't turn him away from maybe what the Giants need. And this is a guy that actually played a little bit of tackle, played a little bit of guard. Once again, I think he showed some versatility with the Indianapolis Colts, so that's one player. And then Tevin Jenkins, who he started off slow with the Bears, but I think as the years progressed, he got stronger. Another player that could be utilized as an interior offensive lineman, 27 years old. So the two common traits are both coming off rookie contracts and both in that 26, 27-year-old ballpark.
I think Jenkins has probably been consistently a better player. Fries kind of came on his last year a little bit, and he was slow going, also coming off an injury. And I think Jenkins also has offensive tackle flexibility. He has played some tackle in the league. He's settled into guard now a little bit. But I'm thinking he might end up he might be the most expensive free agent player on the market on the offensive line, except for maybe Ronnie Stanley, depending on what that tackle market looks like. But I'm with you. Jenkins was on the top of my list just because I feel like I like the fact that he can also be an emergency tackle in a pinch if things go terribly wrong. And I think he's had injuries too now. It hasn't been like the season-ending kind that Fries had last year, but he's been kind of in and out of the lineup a little bit all his years. I think he's only had 700 snaps each of the last 3 years or something like that. Which if you do the math, that's not a full season worth of snaps. So Jenkins, I think, would be a nice fit, but I think he will certainly be expensive at the top of the market.
73% of the snaps in 22, 90% in 23, 78% in 24.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Your point is well taken. But, hey, we've talked about the Giants bringing in free agents who are a perfect bill of health, right? And then they get hurt. But what the thinking that I was utilizing here is what you tapped into, which is you can't bank on the Giants' pre-existing offensive lineman, a tackle specifically, staying healthy for a full season. So if you're going to invest in a guard and you could kick him out to the outside, that to me makes even more sense. Andrew Thomas is coming off another season that was cut short due to injury. You can't go into 2025, John, thinking, okay, Andrew Thomas is going to play 17 games and everything's going to cooperate. So I've got to account for that. Yep. And then we know what went on at right tackle. I mean, with Evan Neal, but I mean, clearly you got Jermaine Illuminor, but same thing. You never know when these guys could go down. I think, to me, the best example, and not to belabor the point, but Olivier Vernon was the poster child of full health before the Giants added him. If Vernon comes to the Giants, and then all of a sudden, it wasn't smooth sailing.
He's spraining ankles, he's tearing ACLs,
exactly.
On and on and on.
So that's where I'm attacking the guard position. I want a strong interior player, especially with Greg Van Roden being a free agent, but I also want to think about, hey, can I move the guy outside in a pinch in the event that some of these tackles don't hold up?
All right, I like it. What's the next position you want to focus on?
Next position, I want to stay in the trenches, because we even talked about that you need a complement to Dexter Lawrence and somebody that, to me, can stay on the field for multiple downs. And also, I'm looking at somebody that can help with the pass rush, not just stopping the run. And here's another under-the-radar guy, I think, from a household name capacity, Tershawn Wharton of the Kansas City Chiefs, who is coincidentally in Spags' defense, but he's coming off a career year. He had 6.5 sacks. He played all 17 games. He was very active around the ball. A big reason why they made it to the Super Bowl again, 11 quarterback hits. I mean, that was double the amount of QB hits he had the previous season. To me, he's an ascending player. He also is at the age, which is the perfect position, 26 years old, coming off that initial rookie contract, even though he was undrafted. There's a lot to like about him. He could play inside, he could play outside. He's got the ability to stop the run, get some pressure on the quarterback. I think he's an ideal fit next to Dexter Lawrence. So he would be one of my number one targets under that label. Then the other guy goes against my trend, but I really like what he's done over the course of his career. And if you want to bring in somebody on a one-year deal who has a proven track record, it's Javon Hargrave. That's the guy that I know, once again, he's coming off an injury that cut his season short, but we're talking about you put him and Dexter on the same line together. Good luck trying to find some wiggle room on the ground. So he's, once again, against what I'm proposing from a big picture perspective, but I'd be willing to make an exception for him because of how excellent he's been in especially stopping the run and applying some additional pressure over the course of his career.
Your thoughts on a Poona Ford, a guy who maybe might not be too expensive. He's still under 30. He's a guy that I kind of pointed at because it's such a strong position in the draft, Lance. I don't know if I want to invest at and none of the guys you mentioned are at the top of the market, by the way. I would hesitate to invest at the top of the market at defensive tackle because the draft is so strong at that spot. So I think you're in the right area. I don't know what Hargrave's going to go for. He's on the wrong side of 30, to your point. He's coming off an injury, so I think that'll depress this market a little bit. But he has been consistently productive over the course of his career.
Oh, without a doubt.
So I think it's interesting to see where that would go. But I thought Poona Ford was a guy that always seems to go from team to team, and he can't find a home, but he's always consistently pretty good wherever he goes. And I thought bring him in to add to the depth up front. He can stop the run. He's a little bit of pass rush juice. And then you continue to complement that defensive tackle spot in the draft.
Yeah, and also, he fit in nicely with the Chargers, which is if you bring him in, you want him to do that to the opposition. So perhaps you were reading into something.
Bang people around a little bit, yeah.
Movement. Yeah, see, these cups are not just for promotional value. They're for examples.
But luckily they are empty. Yeah. Otherwise, that could have been bad.
No, that could have been very bad, especially with wires and all things.
Correct.
If you really wanted to see fumes come out of John's ears and nose, we could experiment with that moving forward.
And also equipment.
Yes. I've been privy to those circumstances. But anyway, getting back to the topic at hand here, Ford clicked with what the Chargers were asking him to do. So I guess my response to you would be he is attractive with that 29-year-old age bracket. I wonder, was it the Chargers system that brought out the best of him, John? Or was it him all of a sudden finding something within his career? So maybe that's why I'd put him a little bit below some of the other players that I was throwing out. And another one in the ballpark of Hargrave is Jaron Reed of the Seattle Seahawks.
Yep.
He's also a guy that something registered in Seattle where he could get after the quarterback and help stop the run. I'd be willing to also take a flyer on him for a short-term deal because, once again, he's no youngster. Reed is 32 years old.
All right, want to go to corner next?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, corner, and here's where clearly it could get expensive, but I can't overlook.
It's a good market, though. There's a lot of players.
Yeah, but the one guy that I think really gave you great return on the 2-year deal he signed with the Vikings was Byron Murphy.
That will get expensive.
Yeah, but I had to throw him out there because he's too attractive given the fact that he can play inside, outside. And things didn't necessarily maybe come to fruition with Arizona where he started his career. Went to Minnesota, in Brian Flores' defense last season. Wow. I mean, we're talking about he took off. I'm sure they're going to do everything in their power to try to keep him. But Murphy's a guy that I would go after because I think the Giants need versatility and they need a proven veteran. So he gets check marks in both of those boxes. And given what transpired last season and some of the injuries and the youth movement, it wouldn't hurt if the Giants wanted to prioritize, John, making a splash. I'd probably say go corner more so than any other position.
If you don't want to go top of the market, how do you feel about that next group? This is where I kind of found my sweet spot in the Charvarius Ward, DJ Reed, Asante Samuel Jr. group. And Samuel is one of the guys, it seems to be the sweet spot for you, because he's coming off the rookie contract, just 25 years old.
Yeah, which also has had some ups and downs, too, in
and
terms
injuries
of his play.
last year. Yep.
Yeah, with the Chargers, but there is intrigue there. Ward I like, and that was going to be the next name I was going to get to. 29 years old, had some off-the-field issues with, unfortunately, losing his daughter.
Tragedy.
And I think, John, that got to his head.
Oh, absolutely.
So I'm not judging him because a lot of people look at him and they say, wow, he's coming off a down year. But he's talked publicly about, I need a change of scenery. And I think if you're a team willing to bring him in, he gets his mind off of what obviously you never wish upon anybody to have to deal off the field. He to me is a nice bounce back, comeback player of the year candidate in 2025. So I think right behind Murphy, who may be expensive, Ward would be right there atop my list. I mean, Reed doesn't need to acclimate to anything. He's with the Jets here in New Jersey. But there's something I like about Ward because Ward's played really good football with the Niners, and I don't think it was X's and O's and how they utilized him. I think it was all mental for him. So I'd be more than happy to take a chance with him.
Do you worry about 29-year-old corners and the fact they're getting close to 30, and a lot of times around 30 corners? And again, I made this joke with Paul the other day. They don't tend to slowly decline.
It comes out of nowhere.
Yeah, they just start tumbling down the hill.
Well, look, Stephon Gilmore is still playing excellent football, and he may be the exception to the rule at 34 years old. So I wouldn't necessarily dismiss what you're saying.
The guys like I gotta go back to Nnamdi Asomugha. That was a guy who kind of fell off of a cliff.
Well, and the Eagles put a lot of money in him, too.
Yeah, sure.
So I don't think Ward is going to be in that ballpark.
Yes, no, I agree with that. I was just giving a player that was really good and all of a sudden kind of fell. Darrelle Revis, I thought, kind of had a bit of a sharp decline once he got over 30.
That's
after
fair.
being maybe the best corner in football for the majority of his career. Sure. So that's why Asante Samuel Jr. is a little attractive to me because he's just 25 and 26. We know he's a ball hawk. The Giants want to create turnovers. He's a good zone corner. That was a guy that I don't think is going to be quite as expensive maybe as the other guys because he's not as consistently productive in his career as those other ones. He's a little younger. He's a little smaller too. I don't know what they think about him as a guy that tackles outside because he's only 180 pounds and 5'11", but that's a guy to me. I don't know. I have some intrigue with him.
No, I guess, would they be concerned because they need corners that could also help stop the run, given some of the issues from last season? I wonder whether or not his frame is a turnoff from that standpoint. Rasul Douglas is another guy that had a drastic change in terms of production at 30 last season with the Bills. The previous year when they acquired him, he was really good, had some rough patches last season. Jordan Lewis is another guy in the division.
Slot.
Dallas, 30 years old, who I would consider in that Charvarius Ward conversation.
I imagine Dallas has cleared a lot of money. They'd be silly not to try to bring him back.
Given his value and how well he's played. I'm with you. But, then again, with a new coaching staff and
new defensive coordinator, Matt Eberflus. Not a good point.
You never know. They may not necessarily think the same way. But, no, Lewis has value to bring him back if the Cowboys wanted to go down that road. But, I'm with you in terms of the same thinking. You want to look and prioritize the guys that are coming off of rookie contracts. But there are a veteran or two that are in that 30-year-old area that I wouldn't necessarily, sneeze at. I think that, there's potential for them to come in. And nobody's saying that you have to sign them, John, to a 3 or 4 year contract. Give them a 1 year deal with an option or a 2 year deal. I don't think there's any problem with that.
All right, let's do one more position, and then we'll get to the calls right here, Lance. How about wide receiver 2? Is there a wide receiver in this veteran market, which is now just filled with 30-year-old wide receivers, of a guy that maybe might interest you on those kind of a short-term deal that you're looking at?
Yeah, I wasn't focusing so much because of what the Giants have, and I think, building upon the younger guys. But
I only ask because Slayton's a free agent.
No, sure, 100%. The guy that comes to mind that I don't know if you view him as a number 2, I've been a big fan, is Chris Godwin from Tampa Bay. I don't know how costly he's going to be.
I think he's getting $20 million a year.
You think he's going to get $20 million? Even with some of his injury history, too, I was wondering.
So.
I really like Godwin.
I think him and Devontae Adams are going to be right there, neck and neck for the top receiver on the market.
Adams, I can understand. With Goodwin, it's been in and out of the lineup, so
he's had injury stuff.
I was wondering whether or not, that would help his cause.
He was so good last year before he got hurt, though.
He was excellent.
He was awesome.
Yeah. Well, and then the other guy is Stephon Diggs, who
with the Dable connections, right?
But also coming off an injury too. Yep. But he fit in nicely with Houston. He didn't have any issues. Wasn't problematic, and he was the complimentary guy. So if you want a guy that's going to move the chains, be a possession wide receiver, he's got consistency in terms of his catch radius. He runs good routes. I would absolutely take him into consideration. I don't think you have to break open the bank per se like you do with Godwin.
How much do you think a Hopkins and a Cooper have left? I only ask because they're bigger-bodied wide receivers to put across from Neighbors and Wandell.
I was not impressed with what Hopkins did for Kansas City.
I was more impressed with Hopkins than I was with Cooper.
Yeah.
I don't think that's saying a ton.
No, I know. I would look at with Cooper, it was more of mid-season, acclimated to a new team. I know Hopkins went through the same.
Man.
No, he didn't. But then again, Allen loves to spread the wealth, so I don't know if I'd read so much into that. Granted, Mahomes likes to do the same thing, but like Hopkins, to me, I was unimpressed with what he did in the Super Bowl. There were plays to be made, and he just,
he had that
opportunity.
That one. He kind of stumbled on that one crossing pattern, ended up dropping that one.
I don't know what was going on. I'd go in the opposite direction of you. Okay. I would lean more towards Amari. Amari is still, at this day and age, an excellent route runner. He's one of the smoothest route runners. If you want a guy that's going to set the tone for the wide receiver room and be a really good mentor, and, can live with playing X amount of snaps, I would be more than fine bringing in a guy like Amari Cooper.
And then finally, I want to ask you about quarterback. Because obviously the Giants don't know what it's going to look like at quarterback in the first round. They don't know who's going to be there, if they're going to be able to trade up or not. They just don't know. So how would you attack the free agency veteran quarterback market?
Well, the fact that, once again, Matthew Stafford returned to the Rams, of all the free agents, Russell Wilson is the guy that I would put atop the list just because of his experience, what he did for Pittsburgh.
He was on top of Paul and I's list, too.
Yeah, so, I don't see a more attractive and reasonable financial investment than him. See, with
Rodgers?
Sam Darnold...
How about Rodgers?
Well, Rodgers certainly, but I think... Wilson has a little bit more intrigue than Aaron at this point of where they are in their careers. Listen, Aaron is the true polished veteran, but the thing with Aaron is you just wonder, at this point in his career where the mobility is not where it was, everything has to fall into place if you're going to bring in Aaron.
In fairness, I don't think Russell's mobility is what it was either.
But I think it's better than what Aaron has to offer.
I think he moves better than Rodgers. Yes. I think that's fair.
Russ was taking on plays and maybe to his own worst outcome, but, where he was coughing up the ball and taking on hits. I don't think you want Aaron doing that. So you get a little bit more athleticism at this point in their careers with Russell Wilson. I was surprised. I mean, Rodgers, he is one of the best decision makers in NFL history. He's not going to get a boatload of interceptions, but maybe it was at the point where he was having to take these chances that normally he wouldn't because of the Jets environment. So, maybe we shouldn't downgrade him much for that. But I didn't see a lot of ability to run, extend plays like what Russell can give you. So that's why I would put maybe Aaron number 2. Sam Darnold's been brought up, but John, to me, after what I saw with what Sam did with the Vikings, and he deserves a lot of credit, if you can't duplicate what Minnesota provided for Sam Darnold, I don't think it's an ideal investment.
Especially at the cost it's going to cost.
Yeah, exactly. With the money, you're going to be putting all of that money in a quarterback, and you're going to be wondering to yourself, can we offer him the environment that Minnesota did? And if you have doubts, then I would stay away from Sam Darnold. It's not that he doesn't have upside and is a good player. It's just what Darnold proved is the environment matters. You don't just all of a sudden look at a guy that had good numbers the previous season, put him on your island, and expect all of a sudden everything to come to fruition.
Environment impacts all quarterbacks, but it impacts some quarterbacks more than others. And I think I'm with you. I think he's a guy where the environment is very important.
Without a doubt. One other player that I just wanted to throw out, not necessarily at the quarterback, before we move on, is safety we need attack. And remember, Jason Pinnock is a free agent, so I was looking at that position too. And Trayvon Merrick is, to me, an intriguing player. So I would look at him. I don't think he's necessarily as big of a household name, but if you talk to executives around the league, I think they value his versatility. He's played the free safety position, which would be the perfect void to fill in if they don't bring back Pinnock. I would look at Merrick, and I don't necessarily think that the safety position is something you got to break open the piggy bank with.
You're right.
So keep an eye on him. There are deals to be made at the cornerback position and the safety position that could very much help the Giants with, again, players coming off of these rookie contracts.
201-939-4513, 201-939-4513, right here on Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the Giants. Guys, go on the Giants Auto Podcast. You can find it on the Giants Podcast Network feed on your favorite podcast platform, Giants app, giants.com/podcast. We just put up Joel Corey, former NFL agent from CBS Sports, giving a whole lowdown on free agency. We recorded a little bit earlier in the week with some of the recent cuts. We don't talk about those guys necessarily in the interview, and we do a very heavy thing on a salary cap explainer on all these option bonuses and void years and how teams use those and how they count against the cap. So go check that out in the Giants Huddle podcast, along with the interview with Steve Palazzolo from earlier in the week and draft season earlier in the week as well. They are some great shows. Go check them out. And then we're not going to do any Huddle free agency podcast next week because we record them in advance, and by the time we post them, like 4 other moves will have happened, and it's going to be obsolete. So we have a draft episode coming up on Monday, and that'll hold us through free agency. And then once we get to the league year on Wednesday at 4 o'clock, we'll start be able to post interviews with some of the free agents that the Giants happen to sign, and analysis of what the Giants did in free agency as well. Go check it out. All right, let's go to John in Pennsylvania, who lead us off today, and then DJ, and then Rocco. John, what's going on?
Hey guys, how are you?
We're good.
Great show. Great show today. A couple of quick items. First of all, all of these mock draft projections, I mean, they're fantastic. It makes it a very entertaining time of year. But at the end of the day, without free agency, most of it could be null and void.
That is correct, John. Do not pay attention to mock drafts before free agency. They are a waste of time.
Right, so I'm just wondering, do you think there'd ever be a movement to swap free agency and the draft, which would also give a lot of these college players that play late into the season some more time to recover? It would give coaches that move teams, a little more time, and just where you'd be able to fill your team's needs through veteran free agents and then fill your final holes with the draft. That would be my first point.
Well, can we just answer that first before you move on?
Yeah.
I don't ever see that happening, John, and the reason behind that is I don't think the union would ever stand for rosters to be filled with rookies that could take jobs away from proven veterans. So the order right now prioritizes the veteran players that are in the league. It enables them to capitalize, make as much money as possible before you bring in the youngsters that are cheaper and will take the spots of the veterans who make up the union. The union would never stand for that in the CBA negotiation.
John, but I think from a team building perspective, I think you're right. I think the way the NBA does it is the right way to do it. You do the draft first, then you do free agency, and it's also the logistics of getting all the draft stuff done after the year with the All-Star games, the combine, the 30 visits. it takes a while, and I don't think you're going to want free agency happening, in May when the offseason programs are already starting. If guys sign in March, they have a month and a half to get a house, move their family, that sort of stuff. So I also think there are some logistical issues in swapping them, though. I agree. Ideally, if you could just wave a magic wand and solve all those problems, draft before free agency. Unfortunately, I just don't think it's going to work.
Makes sense. My other point was, I see so much smoke with the, moving up to the first pick, moving up. My opinion, and it's kind of been that opinion for a while, I don't think either quarterback ever was or is now in the Giants' plans as far as Cam and Shedeur. I think it's almost like the draft day movie scenario where he has a piece of paper in his pocket, and instead of saying Honte Mack no matter what, it says Travis Hunter no matter what. I think the only way to secure him is to move up to the number 1 pick, or make people believe you want one of those quarterbacks so bad you could get somebody else to do it for you, where Travis Hunter will fall into our pocket. Then he will not only fill a spot where, granted, he might not be a Pro Bowl or All-Pro player his first year, but I think at worst, if he fulfills expectations, you're talking about above average to borderline Pro Bowl player at 2 positions, salary controlled for 4 years. I just don't think Shane or Dable are going to put their jobs in the hands of a rookie quarterback.
John, appreciate the call. I think they will sign a veteran that they believe can start Week 1, and they think they can win with Week 1. Whoever that player ends up being, I think they will prioritize that. I also think they have a lot of interest in finding their quarterback of the future. Whether or not they love these 2 rookie quarterbacks, I have no idea. Are they interested in them to do their due diligence and figure out everything about them so they can decide whether or not they believe these guys are worth the first overall pick and to put their franchise in their hands? Yeah, I think they are more than willing to investigate that. Where they are on that investigation and determination, I have no idea. And in terms of trading up to 1, this is going to be up to the Tennessee Titans. Much like last year, the Giants would have loved to trade up to get Jaden Daniels or get Drake May. Well, guess what? Those teams didn't want to move. So it's going to be up to the Titans. And based on all the reporting I've seen and talking to people down there, the Titans want to take their time on this. I think ultimately they'll be open to moving down. That's the impression I've gotten from the people I talked to at the Combine that cover the Titans and stuff like that. But you're not going to know that. They said they want to go through this whole process. Now, you've seen the reports. It sounds like both those quarterbacks are going to be in Tennessee this week or already have been in Tennessee this week. And maybe they'll come to a decision sooner than we know. But it doesn't sound like this is going to be a deal where the Giants are going to be able to trade up this weekend for the first overall pick so they know what their quarterback draft situation is going to look like.
Well, and also remember, they just brought in a new general manager, and I'm sure he wants to be able to find an answer and a solution under center. So you have to weigh that. If you give up the first overall pick and pass on the best option, because when you pick first, you get the guy that you want.
You're guaranteed
no questions asked.
To get the best
Correct.
guy.
So,
guy you want.
that is something noticeable to be surrendering and sacrificing simply because maybe you could get a few other draft picks. So I think once they get their hands on those guys in person, perhaps it will change their perspective. I think going back to the premise of the Giants are going to go after a veteran, I'm with you, but I think you have to be able to balance both things simultaneously.
Sure.
I think you need to pinpoint a veteran that could come in and perform and help you win games, but you cannot then overlook you still don't have a long-term answer, John.
You gotta do both.
You have to be able to move both of those issues forward and help maybe the causes of both together, where the veteran could maybe mold and groom the younger guy. The idea that you bring in a veteran who could help you win, and then in a year from now or 2 years from now, John, you're back to square one. Yeah. If you don't utilize your high resources in the draft to do your due diligence, if you could pinpoint a quarterback. So I don't look at the Giants just because they're at 3 can't address the quarterback position. Travis Hunter is attractive, and his versatility is something that you have to weigh. But the idea that by drafting him, you're getting a Pro Bowler at two positions. It may look like that in college. They're not playing him 95% of the snaps at both spots. No. So you may increase, and we talked about this, John, you're increasing your ability for him to pan out at either or, but he's not giving you production together year in and year out at both of those positions. You're going to have to pick one or the other.
Yeah, he might be able to give you 15 to 20 snaps at wide receiver or something like that, but he's certainly not going to be a full-time player.
But, I mean, that's not going to be Pro Bowl-esque production, I guess is what I'm getting
100%.
at.
No argument. DJ in Virginia is up next. Hi, DJ.
Hey, guys. How's it going, John? How's it going, Lance?
What's up, man?
Doing all right. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I was just watching the Joel Corey Giants huddle, so I now understand how the Eagles do it. I thought it was just one big bonus in a million void years.
No, so basically what they do, they almost have like different signing bonuses in each years of the contract, and then that bonus gets prorated over the length. It's almost like they built in signing bonuses throughout the entire length of the contract. It's very weird.
Yeah, I'm going to check it out. I just kind of started. But, yeah, really quick, I got about 3 questions. I'll try to be fast. I know you got other callers. So one of my questions was I'm trying to figure out why it seems like the Giants are kind of stubborn to convert players into different positions on the O-line. Like, for instance, back in the day with Eric Flowers, it seemed like they didn't want to move him to guard. And then you got Azudu and Evan Neal now. It seems like they don't want to move Azudu back to guard, and they don't want to move Evan Neal from tackle back inside. I'm trying to figure out exactly what's the deal with that.
Well, first, they did move Azudu from guard to tackle. So they didn't hesitate doing that. And I would not be surprised if we see Evan Neal at some point play guard this year.
Okay. Well, that's good. My other question is, why does it seem like when we're transitioning styles, it seems like we don't have the talent to match it. And, when you're changing coordinators, and I understand some of it has to do with, the coaches being fired, which I understand. But with Shane Bowen, what I don't understand is, we had Wink Martindale, which, he loved to play that press man, corner defense, and Shane Bowen has more of like a zone type defense. Why is it we bring in a coordinator who runs kind of a different scheme? Why not bring in a coordinator who runs a similar scheme that's kind of more similar to the personnel that you have in place? With Shane and Dable being on the hot seat, if they have another bad year and they get fired, we're going to have another set of coordinators, another, head coach and GM, and then they're going to want their kind of guys, you know what I mean? And then what if it's like a thing where they want to go from a 3-4 to a 4-3? It seemed like we're kind of like chasing our own tail. Like, it seemed like even when we had Dave Gettleman and he brought in, I think it was Betcher is his name. We converted from the 4-3 to the 3-4. It seemed like we didn't have the personnel, and like we seem like we're still trying to chase that personnel to fit. You know what I mean?
Well, I think it's an interesting point. I would say, first of all, when you make a coordinator change, DJ, what you got to have to understand is, in the interview process, you're asking the new coordinator potentially, okay, here's our roster. What do you think of these guys? Walk me through how you'd utilize them based on your scheme. It's not as if they're going into this blindly. And I'm not saying that that's what you were insinuating, but it comes across as if you bring in this coordinator, there was no discussion about how you could evolve and transform the personnel, and you're just trying to squeeze them into whatever the new coordinator runs. It doesn't work like that. There is a game plan. Right. Sometimes it pans out. Sometimes clearly it doesn't. Betcher, if you recall, it's interesting you brought him up. When Pat Shurmur was asked why he hired Betcher, he goes, when I went up against Betcher's defenses during the course of my previous stops, he'd be a thorn in my side. And I always loved his aggressiveness. So sometimes the hiring goes in that direction where they're not thinking so small-minded about, all right, we got 7 guys on the roster that only play man, so I have to look for only a coordinator that utilizes man-on-man defense on the outside. No, sometimes you really like, philosophically speaking, what the new coordinator can do, and you hear what he has to say about how he's going to utilize the players, and you move forward that way. And I'm sure that was a big part of the logic with respect to Shane Bowen. Remember, there were also members of the Giants front office that were in Tennessee with Shane Bowen. There was the familiarity component. So I think it's a little bit more than just examining who you're inheriting on the roster.
Yeah, I would say too, I think they didn't like the variability of the Wink system, where I think There were just too many big plays allowed here or there.
Because you bring the house
and I think they like the more conservative, maybe is the wrong word, but more of the keep things in front of you type of defense that Bowen brought.
Right. Yeah, I understand. And I think that's part of the reason why Dabo brought Wink, because he said he was kind of one of those coordinators he had a hard time with.
Sure. Yep.
Right. And my last question, because the Giants, it seems like they're kind of far behind, teams like the Eagles and the Commanders in our division. Why does it seem like we're a little bit less opt to take like chances? And let me give you an example. So like in the draft, the Giants, we've been trying to fix the O-line for a while now, right? So I've talked about on previous BBKLs, Andrew Voorhees, I think his name is.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just going back to 2023.
Yep.
He tore his ACL, and I think he was like slated to be like a second or third round draft pick or something like that before the injury. He tore his ACL, and he dropped, I think, to like the 7th round.
Yep.
When you look at a team like the Giants, we're looking for O-line help. Why did it seem like we don't take a chance on a guy like that who, second, third round grade, who we can get in the 6th or 7th round? Of course, he's not going to play for you in 2024, but if you're looking for future, going forward, you take a chance on a guy like that. You know what I mean?
Well, look, if they had a second or third grade ground on him and they did not select him in the 6th or 7th round, I think that was a terrible mistake, and appreciate the call. My guess would be that they did not have a second or third round grade on him, and that's why they did not select him in the 6th or 7th round. So you have to be careful with these ranking lists and these mock drafts. A lot of times they'll have these players ranked in certain spots, and that's that evaluator's opinion. But I think fans generally will be very surprised at how different teams' boards are, where some team might have a guy in the 2nd round, another team might not even have that player on their board at all because they might not be a fit from a personality standpoint. I'm not saying that's the case with Voorhees. I have no idea. But this isn't like, all right, this guy's the 50th best player, and that's the way 32 NFL teams think, or even 28 NFL teams think. It's not generally how it works. These guys it's much more variable and volatile from team to team than you think.
Yeah, I think that's well said. It fluctuates really from team to team in terms of where you see what also they're willing to risk, too.
Yeah.
That's the biggest differential.
I mean, maybe the Giants medical people looked at the knee and they're like, this is a mess.
Without a doubt. I mean, listen, the Giants have been bitten hard with the injury bug over the last few years.
Decade.
Okay, if you want to put it a little bit more in perspective.
Am I wrong?
No, I'm not disagreeing. That's what I said. I was saying small bits and pieces. You wanted to go for the big chunk. And I think that
always
probably...
go big or go home, Lance.
All right. We'll roll the dice and lay it all out on the table here for the remainder of the show. I will be as aggressive as you. I'll try to meet your standard. But I'm sure in the draft room and, members of the medical team who have been here for quite some time in the Giants front office and the scouts, I'm sure when conversations occur, they say, hey, in 2014 when we took a chance on so-and-so, notice it backfired on us. Do we really want to now go down a similar path? The history of a franchise is going to influence, John, how much risk you want to absorb under those circumstances. Now, the Ravens, I don't know everybody in front of me who they've drafted in their injury history, but, they've turned out some pretty nice talent over the years. That franchise, they've also had stability in terms of the front office, where Ozzie Newsome was there for a very long time, and Eric DeCosta, who worked under him, took over. They may be willing to roll the dice a little bit more than, per se, the Giants, who don't have the luxuries under those circumstances. I think that gets missed out on the conversation about what you talked about with the draft boards being different. It's also the philosophy of an organization and their previous history and what worked out well and what backfired.
Absolutely. All right, let's go to Rocco on Long Island. Rocco!
What's going on, guys?
What's up, man?
What's up? How's everything?
We're good.
Just a couple of things on the quarterback. Listening to you guys, with the draft week, and I'm a big Dart guy. It's just funny that now, I really almost expect him not to get past the Jets. I honestly think.
I think that's a little high, Rocco. Still, I honestly do.
I know, but you're going to see. He's going to start moving up.
You might be right. It's quarterbacks, man. You never know.
Just like every other year, there's quarterbacks that move up. Me personally, I like them more than Sanders. And I mean, I know everyone would be in a big, to do if the Giants took him at 3. It's just I see it with him. I also was listening to you guys. I actually like that you guys got some good reviews on the Louisville quarterback, because he's another guy, him and the Syracuse quarterback that I think are going to not first round picks, but go higher than people expect.
I agree with that.
And I think these are the type of quarterbacks that I think Dart is definitely better than, I think Dart's going to be in the first round without a doubt. I think he might move up into the top 10, but I think the Giants are going to have to take a couple of swings at it. And honestly, if one of these other quarterbacks falls in the later rounds, I think even if you think you got your man, I mean, there is a lot of need. You might have to take a couple of swings at it, because they just have not used a lot of assets on quarterbacks. I mean, I understand they took Daniel Jones, but they used to be a little bit more active in taking quarterbacks in later rounds, trying to find that backup quarterback. They just haven't done that of late, and I really think that's a process that they should, kind of go back to and really take a swing at a couple of these guys, because I don't really – I'm all for them moving up and getting Ward if that's who they really have conviction on. I'm hearing crazy, I'm just hearing crazy things about what Tennessee is going to want as far as draft picks. And I don't know if I'm willing to give as much as I hear. I mean, there's reports that, it's going to take even possibly a 1. And then if there's no 1, I heard so many, I mean, it's just, I couldn't even get into it. It's insane what they wanted. But just on another note, John, when you and the Tino were going over your quarterback reviews, going back and forth, your little debate, the one thing I completely agree with you. The only thing that you really didn't take into, it's hard to put into the equation is when these quarterbacks are drafted in the first round, they have so much more of a longer leash. If a guy like, let's say, even, in Buffalo, if he was drafted in the third round, second round, he might have not made it out of his second year.
Yeah, but Rocco, that's because they're more talented. And that's kind of the point. The teams give them longer leashes because they have more in their body physically, so they're willing to be more patient with them.
Without a doubt. I'm just saying sometimes these quarterbacks, they might be going in second, third rounds. If they had a little bit more time, these guys, they're literally given one season. And then
that's fair. That's fair.
I totally agree with you. I absolutely think, he has more talent, and that's the reason why. I just think it's just something to be looked at more as far as that debate, because, I mean, it's scary taking some of these guys this high that, not everyone is fully committed on, it seems like. And I just feel like this is not the year the Giants are, to take a bad pick might really set them back.
Thank you, Rocco.
In that first round.
Appreciate the call, man. Good stuff. Just 2 points on the quarterback I'll hit on real fast. My red line is still I'm not trading next year's 1 to move up to 1. I can't do it. The schedule is really tough this year. I don't want to be sitting there with the third overall pick next year and you don't have the pick. Sorry, I would not. I'm just thinking of what our offseason content would be for 3 months. And I'm going to want to slam my face on the table. So that's my red line. I don't know what the Giants are thinking. If they believe in Cam Ward, go get him. And if he's great, to quote Brandon Bean at the Combine last year, if you get your guy, nobody cares what you gave up to get him. So there's that too. And look, if you want to pick Cam Ward in the first round or trade up and draft Jackson Dart in the first round, then draft another quarterback in the 4th or 5th round the way Washington did with RG3 and Kirk Cousins, I got no problem with that. I'm not using 2 premium picks.
No, I mean,
I'm not using like a first rounder and a third rounder, a first rounder and a second rounder. But if you want to do like a day 3 pick along with your day 1 or 2 pick, I got no problem with that. That's cool. Go for it.
I just also look at it as, okay, if based on the reports, if DeVito's back in the fold, okay, then you're going to draft 2 quarterbacks. I'm going with this hypothetical. You're going to bring in a veteran. You're not keeping all those guys on the roster. So the chances of the 2 guys you drafted Are you going to put one on the practice squad? Can you keep a guy in the practice squad?
DeVito could go to the practice squad in theory, right?
He could, but I just, if you don't know yet at that point, that's also a lot of capital. See, if they didn't bring back DeVito based on reports, then I think it makes even more sense to draft 2 quarterbacks.
True. I mean, luckily they'll know where they are in the veteran market too once they have the draft, so they'll have a better feel.
No, they
for
will.
it then.
Absolutely. But I'm also, I guess I'm thinking a little bit, and I'm not talking about 2-3 years down the road. I'm thinking about what September is going to look like.
I totally get it.
If I'm going to utilize that much draft capital, and there's no guarantee that you're going to retain both of those quarterbacks. As far as the point about the last caller said, well, there's not really a consensus. I mean, there's years where there is a consensus and that quarterback doesn't pan out. So
you're looking at one right now on your sheet.
Well, I brought up 2021. I mean, there were so many guys that went early. The Niners moved up to get Trey Lance, and a year or two later, a lot of those teams are scratching their heads.
Well, I mean, you can even argue that there was no one that was more of a consensus first overall pick than Trevor Lawrence, and he hasn't exactly blown the league up in his 5 years in the league either.
Very fair. But, I mean, even the guys, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, there was a lot of hype at least surrounding those guys. Whether or not it was warranted is a whole other thing, but there was a lot of buzz. So I wouldn't get necessarily caught up, and that was the year also Mac Jones was drafted too.
Like, I feel
to the Patriots at 15.
Much better about Cam Ward's tape and resume than any of those guys that was selected after Trevor Lawrence.
Well, also Ward has a boatload of experience.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Some of those, I mean, Trey Lance, had 5 games? Because COVID interrupted his career, of course, in fairness. But, I mean, Cam Ward, you're talking about a multi-year starter in multiple programs.
That won a lot of games.
So, of course, that's attractive because you're banking on, at least based on what you've seen, tangible evidence that could translate, as opposed to you telling me the guy went out there, he played 1 year of really good football, and you're projecting it's going to work out. It's a completely different story.
Mike in Virginia, he's up next, still wants to talk QBs, and then Len will wrap us up today. Mike, what's going on?
Hey, fellas, how y'all doing today?
We're good, dude.
You're right.
I don't get what a lot of the hate for is with Sanders. Like,
why do you call it hate,
young
Mike?
Man can spin it, huh?
Why do you call it hate?
Just it seems like there's a lot of negativity where they're knocking him down for some reason. I mean, you got to look at what he had, right? Wherever he was at, he won. He got the accuracy. He got the arm strength. I like Sanders. I like Cam Ward. I'm not a big fan of Dart because one thing that they did say when they one of the reports was he doesn't process that well, and that was a big knock on Jones, where he said he didn't process fast enough.
Well, again, Mike, I don't think anyone has any idea how well these quarterbacks process until you get them in a room and you talk to them face to face, and you get them in an NFL huddle. To be honest with you, it's hard for me personally to analyze processing because I don't know. And you should go back. Last year I talked to Kurt Warner on the Giants Huddle podcast. If you go back to last year's shows, you should try and find it. And I even asked him, I go, Kurt, when you look at college tape on quarterbacks, how do you evaluate processing? He goes, John, I'll be honest with you. Since I don't know how they're being taught by their coaches on these plays, I can't.
Okay.
And unless I talk to them, it's hard for me to know how they're processing. So you could be right about that. I honestly don't know it. And I would just caution this. Be careful about just classifying it into you like this guy or you hate this guy. Like, I think Shedeur Sanders has a chance to be a good starting quarterback in the National Football League. I'm just not sure he has a chance to be a top 10 quarterback in the National Football League. Does that mean that I hate him? No. Right. Does that mean I would hesitate picking him top overall because I don't think he has necessarily that star upside? Sure. I like him as a player. I just maybe don't think he has a good of a chance of becoming a star as I do Cam Ward. So I do think there's some nuance in the conversation is the only point I'm trying to make.
With that, why do you think that? That's my question. Why? What does he show or does not show that would make you think that he would not be a top 10?
I don't think he has great physical tools. I don't think he's a great athlete. I think he has an average NFL arm. It's not great. I don't like the way he handles pressure. I think a lot of times when he faces pressure, he will run backwards. I think his instincts under pressure are not great. I like Cam Ward's instincts under pressure a lot better than I do Sanders. I do think Sanders is probably more NFL ready than Cam Ward. He played in an NFL system in college. He played under Pat Shermer for 2 years. He was the Giants head coach.
Sure.
I think he's a smart player. I think he is accurate, to your point. I think he anticipates fairly well. Like, you'll see him throw passes before guys are even into and out of their breaks. So I think there are some things he does do well. The reason I hesitate thinking he can become a star, if you just look at his stature, body type, arm strength, athleticism, compared to the top quarterbacks in the league, most of which are physical freak shows, I'm not sure he quite measures up to that group that way. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, I got you. I appreciate that one, man. Also, to talk about what the other gentleman said when it came to with how people are being used within the defensive scheme. That is one thing I didn't understand, and I did hear the call, and I did hear y'all rebuttal, but I did not understand what's his name, Isaiah Simmons' situation. I know they showed it at some of the talk within Hard Knocks on how we would use him. He didn't get too much into it, but Wink used that young man just to blitz, dropped him in coverage here and there, but I just could not understand why Bowen had him in the slot covering people when it has shown the past 4 years that he's not good in that, and they just kept putting him in that situation, and I just really could not understand the usage that he was doing with this one particular player. And with that being said, I'll let Len come on, man, but thanks for taking my call.
No, thank you, Mike. Great call. And, and I appreciate that. Because Mike came on, he had a strong opinion. We actually asked questions to each other back and forth, listened to the opinions, and I think it's like, all right, that's a fair point. I wish more callers were like that. Where seriously, you come up with an opinion, and we kind of agreed to disagree, and that's fine. Like, that's okay. As for Simmons, I mean, Isaiah's a great dude. I think he's a good football player. But even as a blitzer and wing system, did you ever sense that was like a game-changing attribute, Lance?
No, I never looked at it. Also, what my counter to that was going to be, if you're going to criticize with respect to keeping players or utilizing them, I would go with guys that are much more costly against the salary cap. Bringing in a guy that doesn't necessarily eat into your cap as much.
Right.
I don't really think that's going to make or break your team. If you went out, the point is, and this is what I was taking away from the two callers that wanted to weigh in on this topic, you go out, you invest in a player who on the surface does not appear to be a good fit for the defensive coordinator scheme based on his track record. Okay, that's valid criticism, but I mean, a complimentary guy that wasn't necessarily playing 95% of the snaps, I mean, just going down that road, that's not the battle that I would want to have under those circumstances. The other thing is, and I'm sure if you ask most coordinators, they'll look at how Arizona utilized Simmons, and they put him in the slot. And they'll say, well, what were those coaches teaching fundamentally speaking wise? What was missing, I can make it work. There's a lot of coaches that think that way.
Not a lot. Every coach thinks they can take a great athlete and teach them to play a position the way they want them to play, and it's going to work.
Exactly.
That's what all coaches are.
Regardless of the struggles that even may be documented on film in their previous stops.
Why do you think great athletes get a million chances all the time?
That's the rationale that I would say. I'm sure Bowen had that same thought process, and that's why, to the caller's point, you saw him be utilized similar to how Arizona utilized him, which didn't work out, is because the coach says, hey, I wasn't in the room with him. Our position coaches weren't with him. Now that we get our hands on him, we can make it work. That really is the gist of why you see duplication, even though it didn't necessarily pan out very well.
And by the way, let me throw this out there on Shador, too. I think it was Mike that called up, right, from Virginia. Mike, would it shock me if Shador Sanders ended up being the best quarterback in this class? No. That could very easily happen. Quarterback evaluations are very difficult. So that would not surprise me at all. And he has a lot of traits that tell you, and I didn't even mention his toughness. He is tough as nails. He takes a million hits. He keeps getting up. He keeps playing. And he has poise in that way. He doesn't let that stuff bother him generally. So would it shock me if he's the best quarterback in this class? No, it would not. I'm just one that I think I'm one that values more the physical, innate tools things that you can't teach a little bit more, I think, just because I can see that a little bit more. And that's just kind of how I look at it. And I've been wrong before, and I'll be wrong again. So, Mike, you could very well be right about that. And the Giants might value Sanders more than Ward. I have no idea. No one knows how the Giants think about the two quarterbacks.
Well, I think the other thing that's important to note is, once again, the Giants, the house is not fully in order. Okay? Now, we'll see what happens at free agency. There are things that need to be tweaked around the quarterback for even if you draft a quarterback for it to all pan out. So, if I'm the Giants, at least one of the things that I need to evaluate is, of the quarterbacks, John, who is best suited to deal with non-ideal circumstances, regardless of skill set. And I'm not saying you have the answer or I have the answer, but that better be a huge part of the dialogue and the conversation.
Who could play in a dirty pocket?
Without a doubt.
Right.
So don't tell me, well, in week 4 of the college football season, I saw him all of a sudden go around in a merry-go-round formation, and he did the Macarena, and he still had time to throw it down the field. Okay? I don't want to hear that. I want to hear, under NFL circumstances, do you think he can make that happen? And look, if there's any doubt, then you got to think twice based on the current circumstances of how this team is fitted.
And that's what makes it tough, right? Because I think we've seen Shedeur Sanders, especially in his 2023 tape, play behind a very poor offensive line. It'd still be very productive.
Correct.
He did a really
made
nice
those
job.
types of plays.
Right.
That's
but then
why,
you saw, you watched the final game of the year against BYU this year when they had trouble protecting him, and it did not look very good. So you have to figure out which one of those is the evaluation. You know what I mean? And then you're right, Cam Ward this year, there were games where he got to sit back there and wait a long time to complete passes. That's true. He also said at the Combine, well, guys, if they're protecting me, why wouldn't I hold the ball? It's stupid not to. I'm waiting for a guy to get open. And it'd be dumb for me not to hold the ball.
Sure.
And I love his poise in the pocket. Like, he's never rushed. He's so calm.
Oh, that's experience.
He has ice in his veins. So, again, that's why quarterback is such a difficult evaluation, and we'll find out in 5 or 6 years who's right. So don't hold your breath.
Patience.
Yeah, exactly. Let's wrap things up with Len in Columbia, Maryland. Hi, Len.
Hey, guys. How you doing?
We're great.
Hey, great job in Indy, John.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And thank you to the previous caller for mentioning my name. I appreciate that. Quick comment on the draft. Hold your draft picks. 25, 26, 27, especially your number ones. We're drafting 12th next year. We're drafting 16th the following year. We're in the playoffs in 27. That's my approach. Let's go to free agency.
Very specific.
Lance, I like all the players you mentioned. Very well thought out. You had reasons for what you were doing, and I liked your comment about looking for players who are ascending. I like that point of view. I like that in the draft as well. It kills me when people say, oh, you got to look at the 23 draft. Oh, look at the 23 film. Look at the 23 film. No, I want a player whose best year was 24 and is ascending, and I want that along, if we're going into free agency that way. One question, Lance. Was starting with the offensive line random, or were you, or do you think that's the number one priority?
Well,
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Len. Finish your thought.
Oh, well, what I was going to say was, I think all those positions are important going into free agency, but geez, we're at a point where we got so many holes. You got to leave a position behind.
No, and I agree with you. Sure.
So let's go offensive line. Was it your priority, Lance?
No, I didn't necessarily go in an order of priority. I think if you go back, John and I did a show where we actually prioritized the order.
Has it changed?
No, it has,
what would be your order priority?
It is not. The veteran quarterback's number one.
Quarterback.
Because of the current circumstances. And I would put corner.
So would I.
Number 2.
And I would put
then
offensive line.
Then I would get to offensive line 3, and then an interior / exterior guy on the defensive front. That's how I would rank it. Yeah.
Okay. I would. My point that I wanted to make. I would put the offensive line behind all of those, and maybe even slide tight end ahead of offensive line.
Wow, really?
We got 8 guys we got 8 guys under contract. Why did we bring Illuminor in last year? What was the first thought? When we signed Illuminor in March a year ago, where did we say we were going to play him? We were going to play him at guard.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It was either right guard or right tackle.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, no. It was only right tackle if Evan wasn't healthy. We were thinking he was going to be healthy at the start of training camp.
Well, I would say, Len, it was health, but it was also good enough. It was also health, and if he was good enough.
I mean, we keep looking for guards. What's wrong with starting with Illuminor at guard?
Well, I would say because tackles are a lot more expensive to find and harder to find on the free agent market than guards are, to be totally honest with you, Len.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I should be asking you this question. Are you giving up on Neal? Is that it?
Well,
I would not plug him in I would not plug him in as your starting right tackle and not have serious competition for him.
Yeah, I'm not going in banking on that being a solution for 17 games. Correct. That's my response to that, Len. So if that's the case, then Illuminor now becomes your right tackle for 17 games, which means we're back to square one at right guard again.
Yeah, I just think it's a position, you get to the 7th round, priority undrafted free agents like we picked up, who was the guy last year, John, from South Dakota, the offensive guard that made the roster and played at the end. I can't pull back
I know exactly who you mean, I can't pull the name off the top of my head.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, so you for that position particularly,
You're talking about Kubas?
Yeah, Jake Kubas.
In that defensive backfield.
Jake Kubas, Lance, by the way. Jake Kubas.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We badly need leadership. We've got to address that defensive backfield. That was just a mess last year. It seems to me that safeties last longer than cornerbacks do in this league. I understand your point about they drop off quickly at corner, but an older safety, 32, 33, even 34 years old, somebody to kind of be the director back there on the field and help these guys. Now, maybe new coaching will be. I mean, if something was wrong back there, 2 coaches aren't coming back. So there was something wrong. But I think we badly need leadership there.
Len, I agree. Generally, you need to add veterans in the secondary. I agree with you on that. You need to add veteran leadership in the secondary, whether a corner or safety. You need a veteran back there. I agree with you on that.
Or we're going to waste Zubin if we don't do that. Look, I don't think it's Pinnock. He had his chance. Last year was his year. He regressed. Lance, do you see anybody at tight end? I think we badly need senior leadership at tight end.
I don't understand why.
We need a 50-catch guy.
Well, but I think the tight end position to me for this team could just be a group effort. I don't think you need to make a big splash, Len, for one guy in particular. I mean, you utilized a 4th-round pick on Theo Johnson. Bellinger was also a 4th-round pick. You can utilize those guys. You want to bring in a veteran free agent who you think could give you maybe 30 receptions or so to add to the fold and can block? That's fine. But, I mean, to go out and make a heavy investment in that position when we were just going over, there are so many other needs and priorities.
I know.
I don't think you can afford to go in that direction. I don't think it's worth it.
Yeah, okay. I think you look around the league and the winning teams, they've just got somebody at tight end, and in some cases they got 3 guys better than what we got. I mean, you look at some of these tight end rooms on these better teams, and you say, oh my God, I wish one of those guys would shake loose so we could pick them up.
But most of those guys, I would argue, were drafted. If you look at the Eagles and the Cowboys, tight ends were drafted. So, they didn't necessarily go out and sign them via free agency.
And, Len, I would say it's a pretty shallow tight end class. There are not a lot of names there either, to be totally honest with you. And it's funny, and he got cut, so I guess I can talk to him because he's a free agent right now. Depending on the price, I actually think Evan Ingram would fit in pretty well with what the Giants have at tight end, depending on the cost.
I forgot about that.
And he's a great dude, and he is a speed guy. He's a good player.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Len. What did you say?
Well, Ertz down here in Washington. I mean, look what he did for Jaden Daniels.
No.
I mean, everybody thought Ertz was washed up. I mean, you got to have. It's such an important position today. Hey, Lance, one more quick question. I stepped away from listening for a few seconds, and you mentioned the safety who you thought might fit. I missed the name. Who was it?
Trayvon Merrick was the guy that I threw out from the Raiders.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Thank you, Len.
Hey, listen, guys, have a great weekend.
Appreciate it. You too, man. And then, again, we'll be back with free agency next week. Negotiating period. The legal negotiating period begins at 12 p.m. on Monday. We'll be live at 12:30. And then we'll have our regular 12:30 show on Tuesday. I believe that is Lance and Paul, if I'm not mistaken. And then Paul and I will be back at 4 p.m. on Wednesday for the start of the league year. And that'll be our free agent coverage next week. Again, we'll have draft huddle coming up on Monday because I don't want that to get dated. Go check out that Joe Corey huddle previewing free agency. It is up there. Thank you for being with us. That's all the time we have for Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the Giants. You have a final word here before we say goodbye?
Well, I mean, the only thing I was just going to say is Mike Gesicki, if you want to throw him out there, but is it worth going after Mike Gesicki to then get in the way of other things? I mean, he had a nice season with the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah, and it's also a great tight end class in the draft, too.
Yeah,
I kind of want to attack that.
I would shy away from that. I don't think that I'd move that up the list.
That's why I have DT, running back, and tight end on the bottom of my free agency list. I do want a veteran DT. It's not, but I think it's like a reasonable cost guy.
Yeah.
Because those spots are so good in the draft. I want to attack those spots in the draft.
And that makes sense. But once again, a Hargrave or a Reed is somebody I'd consider because of where they are in their careers.
All right, everybody. Have a great weekend. I'm sure there's going to be more chaos before we get to Monday at noon. Stay tuned to Giants.com, the Giants app, and, of course, the Giants Twitter account for any official moves that the Giants make. And we'll see you on Monday when the chaos begins. Can't wait.